The year is 1542, the 2nd of January. On this day, a document is ratified in the city of Geneva that would provide an outline of the structure of the church there. When we say church, however, it's not as we think here in the 21st century, but rather, saying this provided an outline of the structure of the church was also to say of that of the state and its governance. You see, the document that is ratified is the Geneva Ecclesiastical Ordinances, put forth by none other than famous theologian John Calvin. This is the In History Show on the Semper Reformanda podcast. I'm your host, Cody Bauerkamp. To understand the importance of this event and what was surrounding it, we first have to understand the culture in which John Calvin, as well as most of the reformers, lived in. And it's one that's so foreign to us that when we come across moments such as this, it leaves us truly baffled. A term for us to understand in order to place ourselves in the right frame of mind is sacralism. Sacralism is the union of the church and state together in society. This can be easy to understand when looking at the time period in Roman Catholic history. Oftentimes you had kings and popes in conflict or in unity, or even kings bowing or bending the knee to popes. It was this unity that brought about criminal executions for theological disputes and differences. This was not a recent thing either. Sacralism was so long and pervasive within the culture that it was all anyone knew, including the reformers. So when the Reformation as we know it kicks off with Martin Luther, the influence of sacralism was not one that was on the chopping block. It was the theology of the day that was under Reformation, not so much the practices and applications of whatever the theology was in authority. So what this document that was ratified did was, like was previously stated, provide an outline of the structure of the church. But if you were to read it for yourself without understanding sacralism, you'd immediately start to be concerned. For instance, first, there are 4 order of offices instituted by our Savior for the government and His church, namely the pastors, then the doctors next to the elders, nominated and appointed by the government, and fourthly, the deacons. Nominated and appointed by the government is one of the phrases that in our day would cause serious concern. And not to justify this as if it were good, but rather just in order to properly narrate history, understanding the influence of sacralism and what was happening in Geneva provides a historical reasoning for this. Sacralism was so fundamental in the minds of the people of the day that many who were fleeing persecution from the Catholic Church, which was also sacral, so this was basically governmental persecution on theological terms, they fled and oftentimes, like in Geneva, attempted to establish a society free of that. That freedom, however, was a sacral society, just one of their own theological persuasion. That freedom ended up as a potential criminal charge for missing Sunday gatherings too many times. Not church discipline, but criminal charges. What sacralism represents to us now is something that we would argue tarnished the reputations of such reformers as John Calvin. For instance, The New York Times wrote an article in 2009 regarding a jubilee to show the personality of John Calvin. And as the article notes, there was a hostile reflex towards celebrating Calvin. Why, you might ask? In the culture of Geneva that is now only 17% Protestant, many are taught of an austere man who used physical repression to enforce morals and was intolerant in matters of theology, as well as a fellow theologian, Michael Servetus, denied the Trinity, and Calvin had him burned at the stake. On this day in history, there's a cause for us to remember and reflect on the application of our theology. How do we go about applying what we believe? What does it look like for our society, for our communities to reflect God's will on earth as it is in heaven? Surely the gospel is not simply for one's private life, as the gospel has societal, even political implications. The question is, what does that look like? Does it look like the Genevan ecclesiastical ordinances? I don't have an answer in this short episode. Just a question for you to think about. This episode of the In History Show on the Semper Reformanda podcast was written and produced by me. Special thanks to Josh Koval for the music.